Payday hits. The number appears in your account. And for about 15 seconds, everything feels fine. Then it starts. The mental list. The things you've been putting off. The dinner you've been skipping. The item has been sitting in your cart for 2 weeks. Your brain, the moment it sees incoming money, immediately starts looking for places to send it. That's not a character flaw. That's biology. And it has been quietly running your financial life without your permission. Here's what's changed. Average hourly earnings in the US are up roughly 16% since 2021. But over that same period, the cost of housing, groceries, and insurance has outpaced those gains in most major metros. The result is that 64% of Americans are currently living paycheck to paycheck, according to a 2026 Lending Club report. The paycheck feels smaller, not because it is smaller, but because the automatic claims on it have grown without anyone really noticing. This video is going to walk you through a 4-step system you can set up in a single afternoon, one that takes the guesswork out of every payday going forward. Now, you've probably already tried some version of this. A budget, a savings goal, a promise to yourself that this month would be different. And the logic was sound. So why does the month still end up the same way? Consider this. A guy making $74,000 a year. Decent job, stable, responsible with money by most measures. Sat down at the start of 2026 and realized he had saved a total of $900 over the previous 12 months. Not because he spent recklessly, because he never built a system. Every good intention competed with real life and lost. The problem was never motivation, it was architecture. Once you see how a properly sequenced system actually works, the way money moves starts to make a different kind of sense. My name is Alex, and if you've ever watched a paycheck disappear faster than you can explain it, stay with me. Because the issue almost certainly isn't what you're spending. It's the order in which things are happening, and I'm going to show you exactly how to fix that sequence today. Let's start with the one number most people have never actually calculated. Before you can tell your money where to go, you need to know where it's actually been going. And that starts with one exercise most people skip because it feels uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for a reason. Think about the last time you checked your bank statement. Not glanced at it, actually looked at it, line by line, with no excuses. Most people haven't, according to a 2025 survey by the National Endowment for Financial Education. Fewer than 4 in 10 Americans regularly review their monthly spending in detail. And that's not laziness, that's avoidance. Because somewhere in that list of transactions is a number that doesn't match the story we tell ourselves about how we spend. So here's step 1. Just like a first responder checks a patient's vitals before doing anything else, you've got to know yours. Pull up your last 2 months of bank and credit card statements. Grab a piece of paper and draw 2 columns. On the left, write needs. On the right, write wants. Then go through every single transaction and assign it to one side. Needs are non-negotiable. Rent or mortgage, electricity, water, basic groceries, health insurance. The things that keep you housed, fed, and functional. Everything else goes on the right side. Streaming subscriptions, restaurants, that gym membership you've used 4 times this year, the random Amazon purchases, the apps charging you $8 a month that you forgot you signed up for. Now I know what you're thinking. Some of these feel essential. And yeah, some lines do get blurry. Is your phone bill a need? Probably. Is the premium plan with 5 lines and unlimited everything a need? That's worth asking. The rule of thumb is simple. If you could survive without it for 30 days without any real consequences, it's a want. Here's where it gets interesting. Add up everything in your needs column. That total is your financial baseline. It's your survival number. The minimum amount of money required to keep your life running at its most basic level. Let me give you a concrete example. A guy in his mid-30s makes around $78,000 a year. Take-home pay after taxes and benefits comes out to roughly $4,900 a month. He sits down and actually runs this exercise for the first time. Rent is $1,400. Utilities average around $160. Groceries come to about $340. Car payment and insurance together, $480. Health insurance out of pocket, $90. Basic phone plan, $45. That puts his real baseline at $2,515 a month. He thought it was higher. He had been telling himself he was barely scraping by, but his actual survival number was just over half his take-home pay. The rest had been quietly disappearing into wants he wasn't really tracking. That is the most important number in your financial life. Not your salary, not your credit score, your baseline. Because it tells you exactly how much runway you have to work with. Now, the target is to get that baseline to 50% or less of your take home pay. When your needs are eating less than half your income, the other half becomes available. Some of it will go to wants, and that's fine, but a meaningful chunk of it can start doing something more permanent. And look, if you run the numbers and your baseline is sitting at 65 or 70% of your take home, that's not a personal failure. That's just information. It tells you exactly where the pressure is coming from. Maybe it's housing. Maybe it's a car payment that made sense 2 years ago but doesn't today. Maybe it's a handful of small recurring charges that have quietly compounded into something real. You can't fix what you haven't measured. The other thing this exercise does is remove the fog. There's a particular kind of financial stress that comes not from actually being broke, but from not knowing, from that vague feeling that money goes in and somehow disappears without explanation. The baseline number cuts right through that. It replaces anxiety with arithmetic. And arithmetic you can work with. Once you have that number, write it down somewhere you'll see it. Seriously, that figure belongs on a sticky note, in your phone, somewhere visible. Because every financial decision you make from here on is in conversation with it. Vitals checked. Now it's time to stabilize the situation. You now know your number. That baseline figure sitting in front of you is more useful than anything a budgeting app has ever shown you. But knowing your number is only half the job. The other half is protecting it. Here's what most people skip straight past. They get motivated, they figure out their finances, and they immediately want to jump to investing. Growing money feels exciting. Defending it feels boring. So they skip the defense layer entirely. And then one Tuesday afternoon, the transmission on their car goes out, and the entire plan collapses because there was nothing sitting between them and that $4,000 repair bill except a credit card with 19.9% interest. This whole step is about building that buffer, creating a layer between you and the chaos that is, without question, coming. Life does not wait for a convenient moment. The car will break down. A medical bill will show up. You'll have a gap between jobs, or a slow month, or a home repair that cannot wait. These aren't edge cases. They are the normal rhythm of adult life, and the only variable is whether you're ready for them or not. A 2026 Federal Reserve survey found that roughly 42% of American adults would struggle to cover an unexpected expense of $1,000 without borrowing money or selling something. Think about that for a second. Nearly half the country is one bad week away from going into debt over an amount that amounts to about 2 weeks of groceries and a utility bill. That's not a savings problem. That's a systems problem. Nobody built the buffer. So that's what we're building now, an emergency fund. The target is 3 to 6 months of your financial baseline. Not 3 to 6 months of your total spending, your baseline, the survival number you just calculated. If your baseline came out to $2,500 a month, you're aiming to save between $7,500 and $15,000 in a dedicated account. And that account matters. It needs to be a high-yield savings account, separate from your checking, not because it's complicated, but because proximity is a trap. Money sitting in the same account you use for groceries and gas will get spent on groceries and gas. The separation creates friction, and that friction, small as it sounds, is what keeps the fund intact. Right now, the best high-yield savings accounts are paying somewhere between 4 and 4.5% annually. That's not life-changing, but on a $10,000 emergency fund, it's $400 a year sitting there while you sleep. Not bad for money whose only job is to wait. Now you're probably wondering whether you should build the emergency fund first or attack debt first. And honestly, this is where a lot of people stall out trying to figure out the right answer. Here's the practical approach. If you have high interest debt, meaning anything above 8 or 9% interest, you do both at the same time, in parallel. You build a small starter emergency fund of about $1,000 first, fast. Then you redirect the rest of your available cash toward the debt. Once the debt is cleared, you finish building the full emergency fund, because a credit card balance at 22% interest isn't just debt, it's a leak in the hull. Every month you carry that balance, roughly 1.8% of it, disappears before you've paid a single dollar of principal. On a $6,000 balance, that's around $108 a month gone. Over a year, that's nearly $1,300 that bought you absolutely nothing. There are 2 methods for paying down debt, and both of them work. The first is the Avalanche. You rank your debts by interest rate and attack the highest rate first, regardless of the balance size. Mathematically, this is the most efficient path. You minimize the total interest paid over time. The second is the snowball. You ignore the interest rates and pay off the smallest balance first. Then you roll that freed up payment into the next smallest. The wins come faster. The momentum builds. Here's my honest take. If the numbers are close, use the avalanche. If you've tried before and stalled out, use the snowball. The best debt payoff strategy is the one you'll actually follow through on. A mathematically perfect plan you abandon in month 3 saves you nothing. Watch how this looks in practice. Someone carrying 3 debts, a store card with an $800 balance at 26%, a personal loan with $2,200 remaining at 14%, a car loan at $6,000 at 7%. Using the avalanche, they hit the store card first, hard. It's gone in 3 months. That freed up payment goes to the personal loan, done in another 6 months. Then the full weight of all 3 original payments lands on the car loan and wipes it out. Total interest paid across the whole sequence comes to about $940. The snowball gets them to the same finish line, but costs around $1,260 in interest instead. The difference is $320. Not enormous, but it's a dinner, a car payment, a month of groceries, real money. Once your defenses are solid, the fund is building, the debt has a plan. It's time to go on offense. And this is the part where the math starts working for you, instead of against you. Most people think investing is about picking the right thing, the right stock, the right fund, the right moment to get in. And that framing, while understandable, is almost entirely wrong. The most powerful variable in investing isn't what you buy, it's when you start. And more specifically, how long you let it run. This is the part where the math does something that feels almost too good to be true. Except it isn't. The engine behind all of this is compound interest. And I know you've heard that term before, but stay with me for a second because most explanations stop too early and miss the part that actually matters. Here's how it actually works. You invest some money, it earns a return. Now you have a slightly larger pile. Next year, that larger pile earns a return. Now it's larger still. The key is that you're not just earning returns on your original investment, you're earning returns on the returns. The pile is growing, and the growth itself is growing. Every single year, the machine gets slightly more powerful. In the early years, this feels almost invisible. In the later years, it becomes something else entirely. Let's run the numbers. Imagine 2 people. Both invest $400 a month into a broad index fund, earning an average annual return of 7%. One starts at 25, the other waits until 35. Same discipline, same monthly amount, same investment. The only difference is 10 years. By age 65, the person who started at 25 has roughly $1,012,000. The person who started at 35 has around $496,000. The one who waited contributed $48,000 less over their lifetime, but they ended up with $516,000 less. That gap isn't explained by contributions. It's explained entirely by time. 10 years of compounding, sitting idle, never happened for the second person, and that absence is permanent. That 10-year delay cost them more than $500,000. To put that in real terms, that's roughly 6.5 years of the average American household income gone. Not spent on something, not lost to a bad investment, just never created because the clock didn't start. Now here's the part that stings a little. Most people in their late 20s and early 30s know they should be investing. The problem isn't awareness. The problem is the feeling that there isn't enough left over after everything else is covered. And that feeling is real. According to a 2026 report from Vanguard, the median 401k balance for Americans between the ages of 25 and 34 sits at around $23,000. The average balance looks higher because a small number of people have very large accounts. The median tells the real story. Half of the people in that age range have less than $23,000 saved for retirement. For context, that's about what a single year of modest contributions would build. Most of them are already behind the curve. They don't feel it yet. So where do you actually put the money? There's a specific order here, and following it matters. Start with your workplace 401k, which is your employer-sponsored retirement account, but only up to the match. If your employer matches 50% of contributions up to 6% of your salary, that is a guaranteed 50% return on the first 6% you put in. Nothing in finance offers a guaranteed 50% return. Nothing. Capturing the full match before doing anything else is not optional. Leaving it on the table is the equivalent of turning down part of your salary. Once you've captured the full match, the next move is a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is an individual retirement account where you contribute money you've already paid taxes on. In 2026, the contribution limit is $7,000 per year, or $583 a month. The money inside grows tax-free. When you withdraw it in retirement, you pay zero taxes on the gains. On a balance that's compounded for 30 or 40 years, that tax-free status is worth an enormous amount. We're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars you never hand to the IRS. One thing worth knowing, the Roth IRA has income limits. If you're single and earning above $165,000 in 2026, the direct contribution starts to phase out. If that applies to you, there's a workaround called the backdoor Roth conversion. It's slightly more involved but legal and widely used. Worth looking into. After the Roth IRA is maxed out, anything remaining can go into a standard taxable brokerage account. You don't get the tax advantages of a retirement account, but you also don't have contribution limits or withdrawal restrictions. It's a flexible, long-term holding place for money that's already done its job inside your tax-sheltered accounts. Now, you might be wondering what to actually invest in once the money is in these accounts. For most people, the answer is simpler than the financial industry would prefer you to believe. A low-cost, broad market index fund. Something that tracks the total US stock market, or the S&P 500. No stock picking required, no market timing, just consistent contributions into something diversified, low fee, and historically reliable over long time horizons. That's the whole mechanism. You don't need to be sophisticated, you need to be consistent and early. So we have the plan. We know all the steps, but knowing the steps and actually executing them every single payday, without fail, without forgetting, without making an exception just this once, that's a different problem entirely. And that's exactly what the final step solves. Here's something worth sitting with for a moment. The people who are genuinely good with money are not, on average, more disciplined than everyone else. They don't have stronger willpower. They don't white-knuckle their way through every financial decision. What they have is a setup that makes the right move happen automatically, so discipline never enters the equation at all. That realization changes how you think about the whole problem. Because if you've been treating financial progress as a willpower challenge, as something you have to consciously choose, repeatedly, under the pressure of real life, then you've been playing a harder version of the game than you need to. Willpower is a depleting resource. You wake up with a finite amount of it. By 7 in the evening, after a full day of work and decisions and minor frustrations, the version of you making financial choices is not the same person who set the goals on a calm Sunday morning. The evening version caves. The Sunday morning version had good intentions. Automation solves this by removing the evening version from the decision entirely. Here's how it actually works. Your paycheck lands in your checking account. That's the trigger. The very next day, a series of automatic transfers fires off. A fixed amount moves to your high-yield savings account, continuing to build that emergency fund. Another fixed amount moves into your investment accounts, whether that's your Roth IRA, your brokerage, or both. Your recurring bills, rent, utilities, insurance, are already set to autopay. What remains in your checking account after all of that is yours. Spend it however you want, on whatever you want, without guilt and without second guessing, because the important work already happened before you even looked at the balance. This model has a name in behavioral finance. It's called paying yourself first. And the reason it works isn't motivational, it's structural. When the savings and investment transfers happen before discretionary spending, you adapt your lifestyle to what's left. When they happen after, they compete with every want in your life and usually lose. Let me give you a concrete example. 2 people, same take-home pay of $4,600 a month. The first one sets up automatic transfers on Payday. $600 goes to savings and investments. The remaining $4,000 is what he lives on. Within 2 or 3 months, he barely notices the difference. His spending patterns adjusted. The second person intends to save whatever is left at the end of the month. Some months he saves $200. Some months nothing. Some months he tells himself he'll make it up next month. After a year, the first person has contributed $7,200 to savings and investments. The second has contributed maybe $1,500 on a good year. Same income, completely different outcome. The only real difference was the sequence. Now, there's a version of this objection I hear a lot. What if I set up automation and an unexpected expense comes in, and the transfer overdraws my account? That's a fair concern. The answer is to set a small buffer in your checking account before you activate any transfers. Keep $500 to $1,000 sitting there as a permanent floor. It never gets spent, it just lives there as a cushion against timing mismatches. Most banks let you set a low balance alert as well. If the account drops toward that floor, you get notified and can pause a transfer manually. This happens occasionally. That's fine. The system doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to run most of the time. The numbers on automation are genuinely striking. A 2025 study by Fidelity found that participants who used automatic contribution increases in their workplace retirement accounts accumulated balances roughly 44% higher over a 10-year period than those who manage contributions manually. Same investment options, same market conditions. The difference was entirely behavioral. The automatic group never had to remember, never had to decide, never had to resist the temptation to skip a month during a tight stretch. There's also something quieter that happens when the system is running. Financial anxiety tends to drop, not because more money magically appeared, but because the uncertainty disappears. You know exactly what's going on. You know the savings are building. You know the investment contributions are going in. What's left in your account is genuinely yours to use. That guilt-free element is underrated. A lot of people spend money with this low-grade anxiety underneath it. A nagging sense that they probably should be doing something more responsible with it. Automation removes that. The responsible thing has already happened. The final piece is to review the system once a year. Not every month, not obsessively. Once a year, sit down and look at whether the transfer amounts still make sense given your income, your baseline, and your goals. If you got a raise, redirect a portion of it into the automated transfers before your lifestyle has a chance to absorb it. This is the one moment where active decision-making matters. Everything else runs on its own. And really, that's what this entire system is. It's a way of making progress your default setting rather than your aspiration. You're not relying on motivation. You're not waiting until the moment feels right. The system does the work, whether you're on vacation, whether you're exhausted, whether you've had a rough week, and your brain is telling you to let it slide just this once. It doesn't slide. It just runs. That's the whole mechanism. And the only question left is what you're going to tell your money to do next, payday. Here's the real insight from everything we just covered. The reason money feels like it disappears isn't a discipline problem. It's a design problem. Nobody built the system. And without a system, every payday becomes a series of small, unplanned decisions that quietly drain whatever was left over. What changes that is sequence. Know your baseline. Protect it with a buffer. Put the debt on a plan. Then let compounding do the heavy lifting over time, with automation making sure none of it depends on you remembering to do the right thing. Take a look at your next paycheck and ask one honest question. How much of it is already spoken for before you make a single conscious choice? That number tells you everything about where you actually stand. There's a deeper question sitting underneath all of this, though. We talked about building the system, but we haven't talked about what happens when the system is running, and the numbers still don't feel like enough. When you're doing everything right, and the math still feels slow, that gap between doing the right things and feeling financially secure, that's a different conversation, and it's worth having. If this reframed how you think about your paycheck, share it with someone who needs to hear it.